So hello, I'm back again, another commentary, and I'm going to comment on this article that I found from The Guardian. I think this happened yesterday, and so Trump fired his security director, the cybersecurity U.S. cybersecurity director, who had refuted his voter fraud claims. And so he terminated Christopher Krebs, and it comes amid removals of high-level officials seen as insufficiently loyal to the president. So let's go into it. So Donald Trump has fired the director of the agency that vouched for the reliability of the 2020 election and pushed back in the president's baseless claims of voter fraud. What's strange also is that there's a lot of Christians that are supporting his baseless lies that have no substance of truth. They have no evidence. There's no evidence that he committed, that there was widespread election fraud. So all these baseless lies without data cannot be proven. And it's pretty much just these people essentially just believing anything that Trump says, or just desiring to believe because they feel that that's kind of a payback for them losing. So Trump fired Christopher Krebs, who served as a director of the Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, in a tweet Tuesday saying Krebs has been terminated and that his recent statement of defending security of the election was highly inaccurate. Highly inaccurate without any evidence. Just his own words, his own lies that he's festered up in his head, and he makes up as he goes, just like the devil. The firing of Krebs, a Trump appointee, comes as a Trump appointee. He even fires his own. Well, he's been firing his own throughout the whole time he's been in office. And so Trump is refusing to recognize the victory of President-elect Joe Biden and removing high-level officials seen as insufficiently loyal. So he wants full loyalty, kind of like Hitler wanted full loyalty of his subjects, and so sort of like Kim Jong-un forces people to believe that he's a god. Of course, many of them do not believe that he's a god, but they have to go along with the play, since that's the way that you have to operate in that country. And there's no case of good dictatorship in history. So he fired Mark Esper, the defense secretary, on 9th of November, part of a broader shakeup that put Trump loyalists in the senior Pentagon positions. So Krebs had it indicted. He indicated that he expected to be fired. Last week, his agency released a statement refuting the claims of the widespread voter fraud. Yeah, because they had the evidence. People with data are not going to believe some made-up thing just because you say it. They're going to go by the data. And he's a man of the data, so regardless if he was appointed by Trump, and he even if he's a loyalist, he has to go by the data. He can't just make stuff up and create his own data like Trump does on Twitter. So he said on November 3rd, the election was the most secure in American history. So obviously he has the data to back up those claims. I mean, obviously before they were taking data, that's kind of hard to say for sure, but as far as we have data, then you can with some assurance say that this is the most secure election. And given the fact that we have more internet security now because of the 2016 election, what happened in 2016 with Russia. Okay, so there's no evidence that any voting system deleted or lost votes, changed votes, or was in any way compromised. And how do they know this? It's obvious. They have the data. But of course, Trump loyalists will say that it's all made up and that it's all there's this evil plan by the elite to subvert truth and to make their own agenda. And these people, they go on QAnon and they make up these claims that can never be supported. They're just conspiracy theories. There might be slight truth in what they say, but not to the extent that they're saying it. Okay, so Krebs, a former Microsoft executive, ran the agency known as CISA. From its creation in the wake of the Russian interference with the 2016 election through the November election, he won bipartisan praise as CISA coordinated federal, state, and local efforts to defend electoral systems from foreign or domestic interference. So obviously this was a preemptive move that they created this because of the Russian interference. There was heightened security. Obviously, they didn't want the same thing to happen again, where these outside elements would have influence on our election and create fake news. So Trump mentioned the CISA statement in his tweet firing Krebs. President's tweets also repeated many of the baseless election fraud claims he has made in recent weeks. Yeah, it's easy to refute his lies because he has no evidence. It's like a detective who claims that someone was murdered and then has no evidence to prove that there's not even a body to prove that somebody got murdered. That's how stupid this whole idea of the election fraud, the widespread election, is, because there's absolutely no evidence. I mean, if you had evidence and then the courts were looking at the evidence and people were being convicted, then you would have a case. But him just making stuff up, it's all hearsay. These people that come out, they're just butthurt that they lost the election, and they're coming out and using trying to create noise just to feel like they're going to make a difference, or that it's going to flip something. It's not going to happen. In 2016, the Democrats kind of did the same thing. They got through a little hissy fit after the election loss, and they wanted to take it to the courts and all this whatnot. It was just a bunch of nonsense. Same thing that's going on now. So several top Democrats were swift to condemn the president's decision to fire Krebs. On CNN, Senator Chris Coons of Delaware said, "Chris Krebs' federal service is just the latest casualty in President Trump's four-year-long war on the truth." Yeah, he's been on a crusade to deceive and make deception and make it seem like it's the truth, but you can't make deception the truth. I mean, you have to be blind to believe the things that he's saying. You have to believe, essentially, he has to be your God, and you just submit to what he says, regardless of what other people or what the evidence suggests. I mean, you can make up whatever you want, essentially, because essentially what they've made Trump is they made him an idol, and now they essentially say he's the way, the truth, and the life, essentially replacing him with Jesus Christ, and a lot of people even call him the chosen one. So let's get back to this article. So Angus Keene, the Maine senator, who was among the candidates who may be appointed Director of National Intelligence in the upcoming Biden administration, called Krebs a dedicated public servant who has helped build up new cyber capabilities in the face of swift evolving dangers. By firing him for doing his job, President Trump is harming all Americans. Yeah, essentially he's firing him for doing his job. Like, how does that make any sense? That's like firing somebody like a veteran or that, you know, has had a Medal of Honor because this guy was, you know, he was keeping us safe. So, I mean, it's just kind of way out of character of a normal leader, or somebody that you would call a normal leader. But of course, he's not a normal leader. He wants to be a dictator, and then he's friends with Kim Jong-un, and then Putin as well. So, and then Adam Schiff, the Democratic California congressman who chairs the House Intelligence Committee, said that Trump's move is pathetic and predictable from a president who views truth as his enemy. Yeah, he views the truth as his enemy. He's not a friend of the truth, and he's not a friend of the Lord Jesus Christ. He himself has said that he does not believe that he needs to repent. He finds no need to repent because, of course, he's done nothing wrong. And the scripture makes it clear that the man that says that he has no sin, the truth is not in him. And he's a liar. And we've known that Trump is a liar. He's not of the truth. He's not of light. And then he's mocked Christians. He only uses the Christian faith because he knows he can easily manipulate people in the Christian faith, because like Machiavelli, he said you need to use religion to your favor in the political arena. And so they've made a show of the Christian faith as opposed to really doing what the Christian faith says. And they push the agenda that if you're a Republican, it seems that you're on the good side and that you're with God because you support pro-life, and yet there's other issues that are also that lead to hell. So like lying is something that Jesus Christ and the scripture makes clear that leads directly to the pits of hell. And Mark Warner, a Democratic senator of Virginia and co-chair of the Senate Cybersecurity Caucus, said Krebs is an extraordinary public servant and exactly the person Americans want protecting security of our elections. And so, yeah, this man has all the credentials of, a cybersecurity expert, and he did nothing wrong. He did everything he was supposed to do, and yet he got fired, just like so many who did not stay loyal to the president. And I mean, the same thing happens in North Korea, right? If you don't stay loyal to the dictator, then you get sent to prison, and you get put away or you get killed, you get silenced. And then it speaks volumes that the president chose to fire him simply for telling the truth, he said, echoing many of his Democratic colleagues. Ben Sasse, a Republican senator of Nebraska, also chimed in. Chris Krebs did a really good job, he said. He obviously should not be fired. Yeah, obviously, any person with a brain and just a way of understanding data and just believing in data, right, and seeing the data, and obviously seeing that data represents the truth of the election. Then if you deny that, you're pretty much why didn't you deny that in 2016? Obviously, we're not a perfect system. There's going to be slight errors in every system, but obviously there's not going to be, widespread errors, and they're not going to find them. They're going to track. Eventually, they'll track it down, and they'll find it, because these guys have worked in this field of cybersecurity for pretty much their entire lives, or at least half their lives, up to the point where they graduated from college. So 2 other DHS officials, Brian Ware, CISA's Assistant Director of International Affairs, and Valerie Boyd, DHS Assistant Secretary of International Affairs, were also reportedly forced out last week. So he's kind of forcing out any dissenters. So Krebs tweeted from his personal account, he was honored to serve. Well, yeah, he did a good job, and let him be honored in his service. And then Twitter quickly flagged the tweets in which the president announced Krebs' firing for containing disputed claims about the election. Disputed claims? There's no dispute. His most of his case has been thrown out of court. And then, unwilling to accept the reality, you can see the election. Trump has doubled down on conspiracy theories about election fraud. His administration has blocked the Biden transition team from receiving briefings, but now that Krebs is no longer working on the official capacity, the incoming administration may be able to glean non-classified briefings from the former cybersecurity official. Yeah, he should be briefed, because that has to do with our security, and Trump is sort of putting that in jeopardy at the moment because of his own agenda and his own desire to remain in office, even though he's lost already. So there's a large amount of people that are just in this Trump delusion, and they think that Trump won, and yet there's evidence, physical evidence, stacked against them. And these weren't Democrats or diehard leftists. These are people that, like Chris Krebs, he was he's been diehard cybersecurity his whole life, and so to fire a person like that is kind of a slap in the face to the American people. And you have to stand up for truth, and in the midst of people that claim to be Christian and that stand for moral truth, they sit here and play the hypocrite along with Trump, and knowing that he's telling lies, because obviously there's evidence here, and there's really no dispute, as opposed to other cases where you can say there's doubt. But in this case, there's no case of election fraud. And then they talk about these machines that could be hacked, and then but there's no evidence that they were hacked in this election. So this idea, also they say that idea has been kind of debunked. And so the election was secure, and we have data to prove that what happened was it was right, and it's true, even though we may not agree with it. And I don't say that I agree with Biden, I'm not standing on the side of Biden, but I mean, I do agree on some of the issues. I agree on both sides on some of the issues, but obviously this is not the world that I'm going to live in for the rest of my eternity, so I'm not too concerned about that. What I'm concerned about is people that say they uphold the truth and they uphold moral values, and yet they stand here and they stand besides a liar. And the book of Revelation says that all liars will have their part in the lake of fire. So there's not going to be one liar they're going to be essentially like the murderer that murders, and then the person that goes and commits abortion. They're going to be in that same line. On Judgment Day, they're going to stand before that judgment seat, and they're going to be condemned because they violated the moral truth, the moral the moral truth that God holds in our lives, and He holds us accountable to, because our conscience has borne witness. And so there's really no escaping that. You can be angry and make claims, but then if you don't back up your claims, then you're going to be you're not going to have a case. You need to have a case. You need to stand up for what's right if you claim to be for truth. But that's the problem. And then in the last days, it said that there would be a lot of false prophets, and many prophets or supposed prophets prophesied that Trump would win the election. And look at them now. They're going to go hide behind a rock because they've been tickling ears and telling people what they want to hear. They've not been telling them the truth. And so this is part of the truth, obviously. Whoever stands against, any truth, be it, the election, be it moral truth, that, of like life and murder, they're both wrong. And then also greed and all these other things that we can go into, but some people like to focus just on one thing when the righteousness of God is a lot broader than just one event or one instance of a case of moral truth. So, and I think there's a few more articles on this subject. So Trump is wrong. There's another good one from, I'm not going to sign up to that. Yeah, there's these supposed there's recent election fraud cases, but it's not widespread. These are like individual cases, such as there was a man that in California that committed election fraud, but it had nothing to do with the would-be mayoral candidate. And then the FBI probably has some good stuff too. But they didn't have obviously they didn't have hold of the data that the cybersecurity experts had, which would prove if there was any irregularities. And so it's kind of a null point. And of course, Fox News says things that sometimes cannot be validated. They bring on people that hearsay this, and then eventually in court we find out that they retract their case. Oh, look at this one. Trump election fraud. Trump election fraud claims disappear in Pennsylvania court. President Donald Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani described at length a federal judge Pennsylvania vast but vague Democratic conspiracy to steal the election that justified the invalidation of 1,000 votes, enough to flip the state Biden. Yeah, of course you're going to make that claim, but will it be able to prove that? And then Brand pressed Giuliani to explain why none of the specific legal claims that suit are based on voter fraud. The president's lawyer admitted that the campaign isn't pleading for voter fraud at all. Later, Braun asked whether he should apply a higher legal standard of strict scrutiny to the case. which is required when fraud is alleged. If we had alleged fraud, then yes, but this is not a fraud case. Giuliani, I should call him Giuliani because he's a ghoul. And then eventually, even so, Giuliani, picked up by Trump to lead his post-election litigation, argued that the draconian remedy requested was warranted by the magnitude of fraud carried out by the Democratic election officials in U.S. swing states' biggest cities, from Philadelphia to Las Vegas. Oh yeah, because big cities tend to vote red, and they always tend to vote big big for Trump. Oh yeah, so logical. These ballots could have been from Mickey Mouse. We have no idea. It never happened before. They could have been from Mickey Mouse. Okay, that's a great argument. So Giuliani said, despite offering no evidence that ineligible voters cast ballots, this was an egregious violation, a planned violation. With no evidence, again, just hearsay and nothing to back up what he says, just a ball of lies. The case is in many ways emblematic of the Trump campaign legal forays since Election Day, promising more than the court filings show, changing the tactics, and in this case lawyers midstream, and rehashing arguments that have failed in other venues, with Giuliani admitting in a Fox Business Network interview Tuesday that he's searching for a vehicle that will take a case to the Supreme Court. The Pennsylvania claims are also running up against Monday deadline for the counties to certify the results to the Secretary of State, Kathy Boockvar, who is expected to certify the statewide vote shortly thereafter. The claims of massive voter fraud have a greater traction in the court of public opinion, where they've been feeling Trump refusing to admit defeat, delayed Biden transition effort, and triggered protests on the streets of Washington. Giuliani also pursued a complaint that Republican observers were kept too far away to be able to monitor the ballot processing, saying that all places where access was restricted just all happened to be big cities controlled by Democrats, who all of a sudden decided observers couldn't inspect ballots. This is not an accident, Giuliani said. You'd have to be a fool to think this was an accident. Election officials across the country, despite the claims saying Republican observers were present at all times. So it's all pretty much hearsay. There's really no evidence to back up his claims. Just making stuff up to just continue to support Trump, obviously, because he's in the spotlight right now. So Mark Aronchick, lawyer of one of the counties named in the suit, said Giuliani's unfounded claims about a Democratic conspiracy were disgraceful, especially in court of law. The attorney said Giuliani's allegations are based on stacks of unverified affidavits and urged the judge to throw out the case. For some reason has become a lifeline to the Trump campaign. So there's no evidence, and people continue to. Fox News keeps making these claims that there's all this evidence against of election fraud, and we prove here that there's stacks of unverified affidavits. So they should just throw out the nonsense. So Brandt ended the hearing without ruling on the state's dismissal request. He gave both sides the opportunity to file additional arguments in writing. The motion to dismiss may be moot if the judge grants the campaign's request to file a second amended complaint, which is far from certain. Giuliani said he'd incorporate additional claims in the revised complaint. Okay, Supreme Court. As the federal case was underway, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled that Republican observers weren't entitled to stand within a certain distance to observe counting ballots, eviscerating an earlier ruling in favor of Trump that was one of the few court wins. The campaign and other Republicans have premised their most extravagant claims of voter fraud on the idea that Republican observers were kept too far away to properly monitor ballot counting. The federal lawsuit narrowed significantly when Trump's campaign dropped the observer access claims in a surprise amended complaint on Sunday alleging only the Democrat-leaning counties improperly allowed voters to fix errors on their mail-in ballots before November 3, or in some cases alerted voters to problems so they could vote in person with a provisional ballot. The campaign claims that it's unconstitutional because some Republicans-leaning counties didn't give voters the same opportunity, violating the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause. The state argues all counties were given the same guidance, and the county officials are allowed to implement the rules as they see fit. Oh, so it's only when the Democrat counties want to do it different, then there's somehow... I mean, I think that still stands under the Equal Protection Clause because they all can do pretty much their own thing, and they have their own rules. So what in the world is wrong with alerting mail-in voters when there was a problem with their ballots so they can go to the polls and vote in person? That is a problem? Hardly, Aaronchik stated. That's the extent of the lawsuit's claims. A far cry, the state says, from the voter fraud conspiracy theories Giuliani and other Trump allies have been talking about for days. There is no claim that any voter cast more than one ballot, that voter had his ballot wrongfully rejected, that anyone not eligible to vote voted, and no allegation of voter fraud, Daniel Donovan, the lawyer for Pennsylvania's Secretary of State, said at the hearing. And so there it is. There is no case in Pennsylvania. All this ruckus about all this election fraud in Pennsylvania, it's all made up. It's all hearsay. How the expansion of the right to vote burdens anyone. Okay, how the expansion of the right to vote burdens anyone is a mystery, Brand said. At the end of the hearing, Brand denied a request from a Trump campaign lawyer to sanction the law firm representing Pennsylvania in the suit after one of his associates left an unauthorized voicemail that she said was threatening. In denying the request from attorney Linda Kearns, Brand said, "The message from lawyer with Kirkland and Ellis was unfortunate, but not threatening, as she claimed. I'm very sorry that happened," the judge said. The judge also weighed in on the withdrawal from the case of the campaign's law firm, Porter Wright Morris Arthur LLP, which had been targeted for harassment by the anti-Trump conservative group Lincoln Project on the grounds that campaign lawyers were trying to subvert democracy. "I think that's regrettable," Brand, an Obama appointee, said of Porter Wright's departure. "You should be able to represent clients without difficulty." Okay, so no election fraud again. Giuliani failed to prove anything. The only thing he can prove is obviously there were criminals in New York and mobsters that he took down, which was a good thing. But obviously, what he's doing now, he's going off in a clown show and kind of ruining his legacy of being a lawman. Now he's just making stuff up essentially to make money. And then also Donald Trump's kids are using they're using the so they're false and misleading actually related claims already planning to rampant on the social media in wake of the year's race. Okay. Exponential boost in exposure after they were shared in the Democrat Jr. Eric Trump and analysis commissioned by ABC was found. The oldest sons of President Donald Trump repeatedly decimated and found allegations around the improper handling of ballots, including that they were burned or stolen by sharing videos or pictures of the baseless allegations on social media, according to Storyful, social media intelligence agency that conducted the analysis. They've been pushing the same garbage that Trump is pushing, like father, like son, and obviously with no evidence and without the backing of the courts. Okay, yeah. So they can only win in the view of public opinion on the people that believe in them, but they can't win with people that are logical and that think for themselves. The brothers, who have over 10 million followers combined on Twitter alone, who also shared content that claimed dead voters cast ballots, and obviously that's already been disproven in the court, at least in Pennsylvania, or that ballots counted were illegally changing ballots. The study found there is no evidence to support any of these claims. So they're essentially making stuff up just to keep their believers happy. Yeah, they have to be believers because there's no evidence for it. They have to have faith in these things because there's no evidence to support it. No physical evidence. Despite the allegations being debunked immediately by the election officials, the law enforcement and the brothers did not remove or delete their posts or shares. The analysis looked at 6 videos which were either directly shared or referenced in Facebook or Twitter posts by Don Jr. and Eric. Political speech is the most scrutinized content on our platform, but even knowing this, we went further and developed informational labels so people had easy access to reliable sources about the election, Facebook said in a statement to ABC News. Is just one piece of our larger election integrity effort, which has included creating one-stop shop voting information center, helping over 4 million people register to vote, removing over 265,000 pieces of content for violating our voter suppression policies, and removing dozens of networks engaged in coordinated inauthentic behavior. So that's good. There's some monitoring in there for fake news and fake people that just want to gain political power. Twitter said in a statement, in line with our civic integrity policy, we took strong enforcement action on accounts sharing misleading information about the election, including the accounts you referenced. So Trump they pretty much, they should be kind of banned because they're pretty much preaching lies that cannot be supported and just making stuff up just to keep their base happy. So the Trump organization, where Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr. worked, did not respond to the request for comment from ABC News. Well, of course, they have nothing to say. They can't back themselves up. They can't back up what they're saying with there's no truth in it. It's just a bunch of lies. It's a bag of lies. The brothers were not alone in sharing dubious election-related content. The president, members of his campaign, and the number of other prominent supporters also frequently shared misleading content intended to create the impression of widespread voter fraud. Storyful found that the video falsely claiming to show official ballots being burned was easily debunked by officials in Virginia Beach on Election Day, but was amplified again on November 4th by Eric Trump. So they're making false claims, and then it can never be proven. Once again, more data, more actual people that were there rather than just some video on the internet that claiming that was going on. As of November 12th, Eric Trump's tweet, which has no fact-check label fixed to it, had been retweeted more than 37,000 times. Mentions the phrase ballot burning also spiked on Twitter and Facebook shortly after Eric Trump's tweet, going from around 20 mentions to over 500 according to the analysis. The City of Virginia Beach tweet had been retweeted just under 600 times, indicating how difficult it is to factual information to compete with misleading content. The analysis only looked at the data for public Facebook posts made available via social monitoring tool CrowdTangle. The unknown number of interactions and shares on private Facebook posts was likely much higher. So they're sharing this disinformation pretty much and claiming it as truth. So the false claims that use the Sharpie felt tip pens would invalidate votes in Arizona begin circulating on evening of election day. Among earliest examples of this false claim was footage posted to Facebook from outside polling in Maricopa County, according to Storyful. Storyful's analysis showed that mentions of the word Sharpie spiked on Twitter at noon on November 4th, according to shortly after Eric Trump and other high-profile Trump supporters tweeted about the false claim. Though the brothers did not share the specific video, only tweeting about the claim, mentions of the word Sharpie on Twitter and Facebook went from around 100 to over 5,500 on the afternoon of November 4th. Facebook said it blocked the term Sharpiegate as a means of limiting the spread of disinformation. Well, yeah, they have to. They're pretty much making stuff up and then spreading it like wildfire. It has to be stopped. It has to be quelled. There has to be accountability for people telling lies. Several videos using footage that claim to show suspicious activity in the ballot counting locations in the battleground states went viral in the days following the election. Yeah, and that's why people continue to believe the lie, because they've been fed these things by the people they support. So a video taken down at State Farm Arena in Fulton County, Georgia, purporting to show a ballot counter throwing out a ballot was copied and reposted across conservative accounts on social media, although many of those shares received little to no engagement. But the footage was amplified online when the president's sons both shared the video on November 5, racking up over 50,000 retweets combined. Their posts have since been labeled with fact check by Twitter. Local election officials said on November 6 that the video showed the election worker discarding ballot packet, but not the ballot itself. The Fulton County election director Rick Barron told reporters on Friday that the worker had gone into hiding for his own safety. Also on November 6, Donald Trump Jr. amplified a false claim that Pennsylvania poll workers had filled in empty ballots. Fact checkers at PolitiFact, which is part of Facebook third party's fact checking network, found that it was selectively edited to remove bipartisan poll watchers, who local officials said were more than 6 feet away. According to a spokesperson for Delaware County, the poll workers were copying over information from damaged forms that cannot be read by scan machines. So the context here is important, obviously, for those videos, and they took them out of context and made their own. They claimed and made their own versions of events. So Eric Trump also retweeted 2 videos on November 5 that amplified false claims about dead voters casting ballots. One of these videos has received 2.6 million views on Twitter alone, where it was first shared by a verified pro-Trump account with over 240,000 followers. The video was then reshared by Candace Owens, a conservative commentator with over 2 million followers, before Eric Trump retweeted his 4.5 to his 4.5 million followers. The Senate hearing committee on Tuesday, Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey said that the platform flagged around 300,000 tweets from October 27 to November 11th for content that was either disputed or potentially misleading. That was only about 0.2% of the election-related tweets from that time frame, he said. So, what is that? 99.8% of all the fake news and fake tweets were continue to be circulated. Okay, so Donegal Young, a political psychologist and associate professor at the University of Delaware, said the rhetoric of elites, meaning politicians and others in power, is a potent tool to sway popular opinion. The rhetoric of those individuals is so powerful because, again, their status serves as a cue. She told ABC News, and if we are not going to exhaustively engage with the content of arguments, the information presented, the coup from their status is all we need to guide us. Yeah, so that's kind of it. I just wanted to go a little bit of go in a little bit detail of obviously what Trump and his sons and all this lying going on and no accountability, especially by Christians. There should be accountability for these actions and for these lies. People should not be able to just spew lies and then get away with it. And then, sadly, a lot of people don't do their own research. They just believe whatever is said. So that's it. And so